Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, October 5th. Seems like I've gotten all of the daily quests done in the right order, so we don't have a ton of daily quests, just 2, which should be the right amount for Wednesdays and Fridays. And we should have a big amount, theoretically 3, on Mondays. Also, what's on Steam again is not working. So, and last time this happened, it seemed like what was going on is that maybe Steam itself has just decided to not allow submissions or releases of games on Fridays, on the weekends. You know, it wouldn't be a terrible thought, honestly, if they just said, hey, look, no game is coming out on the weekends unless you file extra paperwork or you're in some special program where you're a trusted AAA developer publisher. You know, we really don't need Saturday and Sunday to be exactly like Monday to Friday of just all these terrible Steam Greenlight games coming out. I guess all I really need to do is win some games. Win some Hunter games, or Druid games, or Shaman games, or Warlock games. So, like, the Tavern Brawl is done. There's nothing else to do, so this is just going to be the good old-fashioned grind that we rarely get around to actually doing, just because of the fact, wow, I'm already at rank 20 too. So heck, if I could get to rank 18 today, that'd be great. That'd give me the rest of the month to potentially work my way through. I've done a lot of effort and research, and I've given up and asked for help as far as my Twitter account. My videos on Twitter just are not embedding the videos anymore. I don't know why. So you're just getting a text and a link. In the long run, maybe that would be a better looking Twitter experience for everybody if that was fairly being split between everybody. But it isn't, it's just mine that are only getting text, whereas every other post that comes on Twitter, for the most part, has some kind of embedded GIF or picture or link to some other website. It could be that Twitter is just directly unhappy or with YouTube embedded videos, or YouTube is directly unhappy with their videos being embedded on Twitter. Either way, I tweeted out Team YouTube and Twitter to see if they'll respond, but since I'm not a blue check mark and thus not one of the special people on Twitter, I imagine they won't ever respond. But heck, it's a small chance. Small chance. Let's discover a secret. So, I guess we'll go through the news, and if there really isn't anything else to talk about, we might even have a silent post show. I don't have a ton of news, but yeah, I don't even know at what position I'm in now, because I feel like I might be going a little low on stuff to talk about. Although that rarely turns out to actually be the case. More often than not, I start real slow at the beginning of these streams, and then I end up speeding up. And getting the hang of it and getting the pace of it certainly has been something I haven't succeeded greatly at yet. Let's see, some beast.
Job's done.
And then return. So I played 7 hours of Borderlands. I believe I had 7 one-hour videos of Borderlands to upload, so that should directly equate to 7 hours of Borderlands if I was to run the numbers there. Yesterday, so that's nice. That's a We're making progress towards the end of Borderlands 2. It's the last couple of places in Borderlands 2 are very forgettable and kind of badly designed, and it feels like a lot of the sections throughout all of Borderlands 2 could have been better connected, and there could have been more of a reason to be near other places, have some submissions that take you back to some of the early locations. The southern shelf in particular, where you start the game, is rather an unimportant section later on in the game. It just does not play any role, and feels like it could have been DLC. The whole game feels like it wanted to be an MMO, just way too much content. When, in all honesty, they could have come out with Borderlands 2 2 years later, put half of the content that was in Borderlands 2 into Borderlands 3, and I haven't ever even played Borderlands pre-sequel, so the one thing Gearbox has good going for it is the fact that it seems like it is just constantly creating too much content, which normally would be a great thing, but oddly in this instance I kind of have to say, like, you failed to it fails to keep people entertained because you're doing the same thing over and over again. The loot box system is now kind of a paper thin obvious loot system, like so many other MMOs and RPGs, where the guns, 99.9% of all the guns you pick up are worthless loot trash that you would have preferred just not dropped. They just immediately get sold for money. The money doesn't really accomplish anything because you can't buy anything. I guess there is a point to say that yes, I am using the golden keys, and the golden keys have given me some very high level guns that are purple rarity, and that only really hurt the gameplay experience because now I am not considering any of the blues or green rarities that I would be collecting. If I was just playing the game without any purple keys, I'm near the end of the first playthrough of Borderlands 2, and I would be on a blue gun. I probably wouldn't even have more than 2 or 3 blue guns. And even having those high level elements, it becomes then questionable whether or not the game is adjusting for that. And when the game in Borderlands 2 does adjust, it adjusts pretty sharply. So you will, like, I was in one area of Lynchwood, I leveled up a couple times and had to go back to do a quest that hadn't unlocked it yet. And when I went back to Lynchwood, all of the enemies went from, I think, around level 25 to level 30. And that's a big difference.
Job's done.
That is a pretty major difference in just how much damage they do, and how difficult it is to wander around an area you've already wandered around a lot in. And there was like one mission, to give a great example of grinding, where you had to kill 100 bandits, and that pretty much required you to run around at least half of the map of Lynchwood, just because there aren't 100 enemies spawned in any one place. And Lynchwood is practically constantly respawning enemies. Yeah.
I hope you like my
There's definitely some editing you could have done too. It is like, feels like a Kingdom Hearts-esque experience where if they could take the Kingdom Hearts series and edit that down up until this point into a, well, actually I'd probably want to play the entirety of the series, so after Kingdom Hearts 3 assumedly wraps up the whole story, if they could re-edit all of that down into one 60-hour game and remove all the RPG elements, in that and just let people have a better experience. That's where I would want it to be. Okay, so now I can hit this. Now I can play this. Now I can do this. And this. But yeah, there's really not too much to say about Borderlands 2. I'm grinding away, and I'm still very much debating whether I should do the DLC. That is the moral quandary. Certainly, is should I invest in the DLC and really try and power through it, or should I give it a break and probably never come back to it? Because let's face it, the Talos Principle DLC, I've had that for a very long time, and that's not likely to ever get played.
In the light's name.
And I don't want to do that. I'd prefer to not start a game if I'm in total, if I'm afraid of the DLC. So I probably am going to do all the DLC on Borderlands 2. I might skip the pre-sequel, particularly if EA ever gets around to it. That was certainly one thought that hit my head. Is EA is known, we talked about this last live stream, they're known for killing series. Did they silently at some point kill the Borderlands series and Gearbox just said, no, we won't let you? Like, because that really could just be where they are at. It really could just be a scenario where Gearbox says they have some kind of legal right to license to it to say, no, EA, you can't unilaterally kill this series, but maybe you can't, they're not funding it, or they won't put the money up to publish it, or maybe it is all Gearbox's fault and they're just taking way too long to develop it. The longer they take to make Borderlands 3, the more I wonder if it is just going to be this extremely long game, which would be great for everybody who hasn't played Borderlands since Borderlands 2 came out, or and a little bit worse for people who had played Borderlands the pre-sequel. But for me in particular, for anybody else who wants to catch up, you are going to run into scenarios where you've played a considerable amount of Borderlands if they come out with Borderlands 3 and it's another 200 hours of gameplay, that's gonna be really, really hard to play. So I probably will. I probably should do the DLC for Borderlands 2 since I'm already committed to that, and then potentially just forget the pre-sequel. Like, everybody knows that the pre-sequel's the worst of the group. I don't think there's anything I can do here. So yeah, we'll just do that. So let's start covering the news. GameIndustry.biz has an article. Capcom announces a live-action Mega Man movie. Japanese publishing company working with the Planets of Apes production company Churnin Entertainment. So I suppose, knowing that is probably going to be a more realistic, loosely based on Mega Man style game, in a real sense, licensing a movie that is effectively could be sold as RoboCop might make some sense, even though the RoboCop movie that did come out didn't really excite many people. But yeah, I could see that, and really this is probably just them buying the option on it. It's until the movie is ready to be released, it's not ready to be released. Movies have been made and left on the shelf for years and years and years. There also is supposedly a Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario game that's supposed to be made. You would think originally, though, and you have to be careful about any Japanese company saying that there's going to be a live-action Japanese movie, because the Japanese live-action movie industry is pretty full of really, really bad, cheaply made I don't know how you would describe them perfectly here. Cheaply made live action movies, straight to video movies. We in the West are seeing more of movies like that, in the sense of the Bleach movie that's on Netflix. You kind of get a Western version of that with the Netflix Death Note movie. They're not done with a high budget. They're not done with anything interesting. Even the live action Ghost in the Shell movie, it's not good. It's not the same. And there's a lot of different reasons with it, but in particular, those three movies that I mentioned, Bleach, Death Note, and live action, all have some sense of fantasy, some sense of a lot of special effects potentially being needed in movies that really were never going to get that kind of budget. So yeah, there's definite issues with things like that. I don't know. Let's see. What would be a good live action from animated series to make? Something that would be pretty easy with not very many special effects.
Someday I'll be just
You could
like
probably
you.
do a Cowboy Bebop or Outlaw Star series pretty easily, because there already probably are tons of sci-fi special effects. You could probably do a Tenchi Muyo series of the original Tenchi Muyo OAVs, because that was not, even though it was aliens, it really didn't go into the space battles in the original series, so the budget would be pretty cheap there. They've made several attempts at making Guyver live-action movies that failed. You'd probably want to go with something that is a more slice-of-life romance style show. Something like that you could easily not even have to sell that it was an anime at first. That's probably where you'd want to go with converting something to live action. Where I'm kind of going off on the tangent here, but when you think about Mega Man, as somebody who hasn't played any of the Mega Man series and really needs to get around to doing that, you're playing as this blue robot that is jumping around a lot of different platform levels. So you immediately, before you even get to the costumes of the bosses, you need a costume for Mega Man, and you need a bunch of locations. You need special effects for Mega Man's blaster. You need special effects probably for his platforming. You need special effects for the enemy's attacks. You need to change all those special effects every time Mega Man gets a new ability and his attacks change. You need special effects for all the enemies, because they're not human enemies. Like, there's just so much when you start to think about how the production of something like this would go, to point out that this is not a good movie to put a small amount of budget in. Now, the Planet of the Apes movies were tons and tons of special effects, so that I understand why they would partner with that company. But still it's questionable what kind of story you get out of a Mega Man live action movie and what kind of events. I suppose maybe some of the Mega Man cartoons had a few interesting ideas that might be played off to have some stories in it, but I don't think any of that has been amazingly great. See,
In the light's name.
nice.
Stop copying me! Stop copying me!
Attack here. Yeah, but then it could just be that Mega Man turns out to be some kind of, I mean, it could be an attempt to do a better Superman, or just as good as the last Superman movie. If that's the case, then you don't really have to do that much work. Now would be the perfect time to have played this guy.
Face the light.
Let's move on to the next story, even though we really don't have a ton of stories to talk about. We have a game on Steam, came out October 4th, called Galactic Lander. This looks like a black and white updated version of an old, I think, Commodore 64 Atari, like first generation game called Lander. It's, you know, this is one of those first year students video game project style games that really shouldn't be on sale, and I guess it's free, so it isn't on sale. I would say if you were programming video games, making something like Lander, making your own versions of some of the first generation of games, the pre-NES games, make some sense. When I was in programming class, I programmed Pong, and it wasn't a project or anything that I was supposed to do, although I think I may have gotten a grade off of it. Anyways, just out of as much time as I spent on it. And that was programming Pong without any kind of graphics library, really, so I was directly drawing just lines and squares. I think is pretty much all you could do. You couldn't load bitmaps or any kind of 3D textures or anything. Nowadays, with Unity and Unreal and programming in those languages, making Pong should take an average person probably less than a week to do, but it probably took me half a year. But yeah, programming those really simplistic games puts you right on the correct path of knowing your limitations and learning and growing your limitations. But putting it on Steam seems ridiculous. And Steam at some point is going to have a come to Jesus moment where they decide, are they really going to let every low tier video game programmer wannabe put their student projects on Steam, and then Steam just becomes this download website. Although, you know, getting somebody to pay $100 to upload a 5 megabyte game, potentially, that never gets downloaded again, and just be a forever online backup service, is an incredibly expensive backup service for as little data is actually being used. And that Lander game probably really was only about 5 megabytes, so Steam might very well be, Valve and Steam might be making money hand over fist by simply allowing people to upload these small games for really no reason.
Time's up. Let's do this.
If nobody is ever finding or downloading these bad games, it's really not costing Valve any bandwidth. It's just a small, insignificant fraction of some hard drive somewhere. Or continuing down that idea, we have another game on Steam called Superior Wizards that looks like an MS Paint RPG game. It doesn't even look like it's an RPG Maker game. It just looks like it's a handmade RPG game. It's early access, 10% off for $3.59, which seems like it's way too expensive for as simplistic as the game looks like it is. This looks very much like a Windows 3.1 style of game that would have been totally acceptable in that time, or even a Windows 95 game. It would have been okay to play a game like this, but coming out in 2018, it's just laughably bad. Next we have a game called Girl with a Big Sword. Girl with a Big Sword is a hardcore JRPG in which you play for a girl with a big sword. This looks like potentially an RPG Maker game. Let's see. Yeah. Yep, this looks very much like a RPG Maker game, and again, it is English and Russian, so it's always very questionable when you have something that is supposed to be a JRPG and yet it's being made by an English and Russian speaking team. I mean, how do you not just immediately assume that this is a troll game? It's 99 cents, but I have no interest in it. In fact, I have so few games today that I imagine I won't have much interest in anything. Gematsu has an article. According to the Wall Street Journal, Nintendo is going to introduce a new Switch model in the second half of 2019. New model to be introduced, quote, as early as summer. Now, I am not sure. Okay, I can even read this and don't have to just say it directly myself. The outlet reported that Nintendo is still debating on new hardware and software features to include in a new model and weighing the cost of the features. One option is to improve the display, which is currently a lower-end LCD without some technologies that are standard in recent smartphone LCDs, but the new model is not expected to adopt the OLED panels used in the iPhone X. I severely doubt there's going to be much differences because you really don't want to split the player base of Switch people and the early adopters. So I imagine they could say the screen is brighter, but they can't probably change the resolution. I don't think the hardware, the Tegra processor inside the Switch, which they definitely couldn't change that. I don't think any of that could be changed. So they can say it's brighter, they could say it's sharper, they could say it's bigger at the same resolution, but that's kind of all they can do. The main reason why there's going to be a new version is simply because the old version is hackable and has homebrew on it, and I guess I'm technically in the market if somebody wants to give me a free, already banned for life, homebrewed Switch console that would just play homebrewed games. Like, I would take that, certainly. I'm not sure I really need that, but it would be fun to... It would be better experience playing homebrew games on a Switch than it is trying to play it, in all honesty, on the Raspberry Pi and put a screen on that and put a battery on that and make a portable system. Tragic Master should have called it Sword Envy. I don't get the reference there, Tragic Master. It's probably something I said and I've forgotten what I said already. Yeah, I imagine if they even do introduce a new model, it might be done very quietly with no new markings or indications whatsoever. You may just see in the stores a new model number and nothing else. That's just whatever Nintendo thinks is unhackable. Let's see. TechRaptor also had an article about Mega Man making a movie. I don't think I need to read that article because there's really no information on that. Treasure Master says good game, thank you. Funny thing here is I'm gonna run out of news and way before I even finish all the daily quests. That's gonna be weird. We have a game on Steam called Revenant Dogma. See, maybe what we'll do is we'll see if I can do something crazy. We'll see if I can play around with setting up the system that I wanted to set up. If we have enough time where I can show what I'm looking at via hotkey. Just a live customer service tech service session of figuring out how this would work. That's something I guess I can work on. And somebody might be interested in watching that live, maybe, maybe not. Although in all reality, the smart move would be to do all of that off screen in case something goes horribly wrong. This game, Revenant Dogma, is an RPG adventure game. It looks a little bit better animated than most, but it still, for the most part, looks like it's just the same old, same old. There is something weird about its low quality 3D graphics getting integrated with low quality 2D RPG graphics. I'm not sure why you would split your efforts there and not come out with anything that looks great either way. Revenant Dogma is 10% off for $11.69. It's in English and Japanese.
Mind if I roll need?
Let's look at this developer and see what else they've developed. Well, they've developed several other games on Steam, and only one of them has been rated positive by 19 user reviews. And this publisher has published like 3 games that have been rated positively. So what does get rated does get good reviews, but it's not a lot of people playing them. And I think in the realm of JRPGs in particular, your need or desire to have an audience that likes your product is pretty high. So Revenant Dogma is pretty easily closed as a potential option. Next we have an extremely low effort looking MS Paint Contra game called Destruction Paper. It says it's in a bunch of languages, although the interface it says is not in any of those languages. It says $4.99 with no discount. It says it has 8 levels with 14 bosses and 2-player co-op, which I think is probably only local co-op. Let's close that tab. Let's see.
So many possibilities.
Draw. Play. Heal. Play. Heal.
It's playtime.
Draw. That was interesting. You drew the card and then immediately destroyed the card. Next we have a game on Steam called Epic Game Theory. It looks to me like another RPG Maker game. English only. It is free, so I guess the price is right for it. And this is the only game from that developer. So you certainly still, at least during the weekends, can sneak in a lot of RPG games. The weird thing, of course, is always going to just be that there potentially can be a lot of stuff going in the background from day to day, week to week at Valve, as far as getting these low effort and bad games off of their listings in these troll games. You never know what was submitted and what was rejected. It kind of would potentially explain some things, though, if Valve did come out with a rejected report once a month and say, here's titles of games, here's some examples of titles of games we rejected because of their titles, here's some examples of games that we rejected because they were low effort looking troll games, here's some examples of games that we rejected because they were malware. Like, make some baselines. You know, YouTube wouldn't be too bad either if they said, here's some examples of actual videos that got flagged and demonetized. Here's some examples of why. Like, here's some perfect examples. You just have to cherry pick some perfect examples where no reasonable person would disagree with you. And the most extreme examples is all you need.
In the light's name.
Let's do this first.
Families and Yetis!
Played that wrong.
Again!
GameIndustry.biz has an article. Telltale is reportedly searching for a partner to finish The Walking Dead by hiring its former developers. The third episode is supposedly almost finished, would be completed with the fourth by Telltale vets as contract employees. I believe there's been some updates to the story. In fact, there's a lot going on still where it seems like the remaining of the skeleton crew, or at least some of the remaining of the skeleton crew, has been laid off. And you know, Telltale's in a weird position. You really can't do a lot right now. Because you bring back the vets, they probably don't want to really work on the job or finish it, and let's face it, you've burnt out those employees, and they weren't honestly doing a great job for years now. So is that really the best way of all the potential possible ways you could do this? Bringing back the old people who know that they've been treated badly already, the right move. And I have a relative story here. Like, I once worked for a job, and then I quit that job after 6 months because halfly I was young, and halfly I was right that everybody in that job had a very bad attitude, and it was just not a forward-moving company that was going to improve or do anything new or interesting. It was just, I have to play Druid and Hunter now. It was really just, everybody in the job wanted to complain and be stuck in a moderately bad situation so that they could complain. So I quit it after probably less than 6 months. They begged me not to just leave that moment, which in all honesty I should have just left that moment. But also in all honesty, there was really no reason for me to quit. Had I been older, I would have probably just taken the money and run with it a little bit longer and looked for other jobs, particularly in between it. But you do need to keep an eye on your mental health. The point of this story, though, is 5 years plus later, they called me back, and I had worked for 5 years at a different job, and in that other job I had gotten raises and become older and wiser and a much more valuable employee, in my opinion. And so they called me back and they said, oh, we'll hire you back and we'll pay you that minimum wage that we paid you before. I'm like, no, you gotta be joking. I've been working for 5 years. I was getting well double that per hour at the other job. And it just happened that I knew somebody that walked around the area, and this was a technical job, and one of the main things is all the equipment was like 30 years old and it needed to be upgraded terribly. And so I had a friend that a few years later after that, so 7-8 years later, I asked him, hey, is all of the equipment there still really old and like really a mess? A lot of it is just wiring issues in general. Like nobody had bothered to clean up the wires or fix the wires, which, you know, arguably, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And my friend told me, yeah, it's still exactly a total mess. So 7 years later, they still hadn't improved anything or done anything, and I'm fairly certain that even to this day they have not improved or done anything, and that's just no way to run your business. The point being there is that even I know, if had I taken that job, it would have been a nightmare. I would have hated it. I would have probably wanted to quit the second I got back into it. There is... Oh, I screwed up bad there. There's totally an idea I could get people who are out of work and they're desperate. They might take the job, but the second they walk through that door and it's the same old, because your boss is still going to be that same jerk, and he's the jerk that laid off the whole company. Like, it is just not going to be a good environment to hire old employees to finish the product. You might as well let a new company put their hands in it, and then even in the blame game, it makes more sense. Like, if you're really just looking to say, well, actually, this is the new company's fault because they didn't do a good job with our beloved Walking Dead series, like, that makes so much more sense. But in all seriousness, with the slight issue of having to learn the program, the Telltale tool, which probably wouldn't be too hard, unless somebody is not even going to use the Telltale tool and do the final parts of The Walking Dead and get it out quickly. I think you could hire almost any company. And it would be better, frankly, if you had a different company hired out to finish The Walking Dead, and then they hired the employees that used to work at Telltale. Because in the exact same scenario, if let's say Ubisoft decides that they're going to finish The Walking Dead, if the Ubisoft hired some former Telltale employees, at least they can dangle that carrot to say, hey, we're not going to fire you after this project is done. We're going to integrate you into a new team, and we're going to have you continue to make projects for us. Even if that's not true, and in the end you do get fired, at least there's some promise there. If you go back and work for Telltale, Telltale is going to go bankrupt. It just is. You know it is. And I suppose I didn't say it out loud, but it's kind of obvious that if you lay off most of your employees and you're keeping a skeleton crew, that skeleton crew wasn't on firm ground either. But I think it was pretty obvious to everybody that that was the case. Like, that skeleton crew of 25 employees was not going to stay employed for very long. They may have thought they were going to stay employed for longer than a couple of weeks to help the company just clear out all of its offices and file for bankruptcy. Moving away from that story, though, for a second at least, Gamasutra has an article, the Ubisoft chief, the games industry needs to find its soul, which is interesting that a Ubisoft developer would say that, considering Ubisoft in particular is one of the worst companies. It's not EA, but it's right just a slight notch below it as far as being soulless. The latest Assassin's Creed Odyssey game is, from reports I'm hearing now, very heavy about pushing people to buy microtransactions and shoving that content, the microtransactions, into people's face, and that the game is pretty grindy and pretty repetitiveness. And if you look over the course and the lifetime of the Assassin's Creed series, it has been a moderately soulless series. You do have the Ezio collection, yes, there is some soul there, but, and I think they tried to have some soul with the Altair collection, as far as, and I'm using soul here as an example of having a thematic storyline and artistic vision. But by the time you're in Assassin's Creed 3, 4, 5, 6, all of these games really don't have a thematic vision or storyline. They're changing all of the time. They're really not adding anything to an overlying story that matters. If they were to make a game and not call it Assassin's Creed and try and sell it, it would sell just as well, and that's exactly what they did with Watch Dogs. So let's see, this is a Game Informer interview. Let's see. This person named Hascoat, Hascoet, said, he's not quoted here, but it says, video games must become more than just chunks of pure entertainment. Now, warning signs are immediately going off in my ears, because I'm wondering if this is all going to be coded language against voting against Trump immediately. And is that what they mean by video games need to have a soul? I think video games can be pure entertainment. Like, I don't see a reason why it couldn't be. I don't think it needs to... I don't think there's any real reason why you couldn't just have pure fun. Like, when I was playing Bayonetta 1 for the first time, I felt like I was having pure entertainment there with this stupid, dumb story. Go. Let's see. Let's see. It says, video games must be more than just chunks of pure entertainment. That's not to say they shouldn't be fun or strive to tell engaging stories, but rather that players should be walking away with something more tangible once they put their controllers down. And I would kind of disagree with that as an idea. Like, for all the players that just want to turn off their brains and relieve stress, the last thing you want to have to do is play a game that is going to give you something that you have to continue to think about after you put the controller down. This is one of the reasons why I feel like Borderlands 2 is not as good of a story or game as Borderlands 1 is, because it starts to go into the seriousness and get away from the fun, stupid run and gun shooter that Borderlands 1 felt like it was. Here's a quote. Quote, "You know what's missing in the industry? Question mark. A soul. Video games are about gaming, and gaming is not about entertainment." Oh my goodness. So Ubisoft, this Ubisoft person has their head up their own butt. I mean, how do you put it any other way? He literally just said, video games are about gaming. Okay, sure. And gaming is not about entertainment. No! Like, gaming is 100% about entertainment. Maybe on some very simplistic levels you can say gaming is also about learning social cues and getting along with other people and conflict resolution, maybe, but that's at such a basic level that you'd say maybe a 2-year-old is getting that kind of stuff out of it. Wow, this guy should be fired. Like, his mentality is totally wrong. So it's comma, and gaming is not about entertainment, comma, it's about learning. What? What in the world are you talking about? I feel like at this point I've become one of those YouTube reaction people who's making every single sentence mean way more than it really should. But in all seriousness, this is a direct quote. Gaming is not about entertainment, comma, it's about learning. When you learn, you have fun. I can name thousands of students in school right now, well, probably not right now, that would disagree with that. But when you just entertain, we are losing something. No, you're not. It's totally acceptable. It's totally okay. You don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed to turn your brain off and want to watch something. If you want, a great example is WWE wrestling. It's dumb, it's stupid, it's dumb, it's fun, it's entertaining. You're not learning anything. WWE wrestling is the most popular sports entertainment show in the world. There's nothing wrong with it. This guy needs to be fired. His mentality is crazy. I'm not sure if there's some underlining mentality that's not being said here, some more nefarious agenda that's being pushed, but just on the face of it, you don't even have to go any further than that. There's a lack of understanding what entertainment is, thus you shouldn't be working in the entertainment industry. Here's another quote. "I questioned the team about what real benefits the players will take away from the game for their real life." Like, just stress relief and entertainment and just killing time. That's all people really want. Like, nobody wants to learn trigonometry while playing a video game. The quote continues, "Right now we don't do enough in this area. This is what excites me. How to make something that lets you have the most fun while also having something benefit your life." So, Hascoat needs to go from Ubisoft, clearly. And I guess you could kind of see why, with that mentality, that they came out with the Assassin's Creed Odyssey edutainment mode. But it is fair to say that edutainment mode where you just walked around Egypt was probably a massive failure. Like, it really didn't make any sense that an M-rated game, even if it had a special mode, would be allowed in schools. And I'd never heard any stories of it actually being allowed in schools or played with, and I'm not really surprised there. And so if Haskell wants to go make a Mavis Beacon teach us typing style game, if he wants to go make Where in the World is Carmen San Diego, by all means, that there is a small potential there of finding some games that are educationally focused, that would be okay, but that's not what the Ubisoft projects should be by far. It really doesn't make any sense at all that the games Ubisoft makes, Assassin's Creed for example, should be the ones to do that. And his mentality is probably just not compatible with the game industry at all, because he's saying all of the game industry needs to be this way. Since we have some extra time, I guess I could click on this full article and see if he says anything else. Let's see. This is Ubisoft's creative head, and he wants all their games to be basically edutainment, or in some way not just about having fun, which certainly explains why a lot of the Ubisoft games often aren't that fun. I guess maybe you could be fair and you could say maybe they just talk in flowery language but they don't act that way in their job. And this, of course, is a argument that's often made, is that you can say, oh, a politician just talks that way but they don't really mean it. And as human beings, the best we can ever really do is take people at their word. So I have to take him at his word, and my description there is that Ubisoft needs to fire their head of creative development, or at least have a long talk about it with him and say, look, you shouldn't be saying this stuff out loud, because this is exactly the kind of quotes that would be thrown right back in his face. Like, next time Ubisoft makes even a slightly bad game, this quote is going to come back up and get mentioned. I'm looking at the rest of this interview, and it's long, and it doesn't seem like there's any way for me to skim it and get any more nuggets of gold. I imagine those were the most interesting things. At least that seems like that was the most interesting thing to everyone, because the next article I have is a GameIndustry.biz article saying saying the quote, gaming is not about entertainment, it's about learning. Let's see, how do we want to do this?
No one.
Ugh.
For the wild.
I played poorly there.
That is incredible.
Yeah, that was an incredibly bad way to play.
A natural mistake.
There went my win streak. Let's see. Let's close that article too. So where are we? I need one more druid and hunter victory. I think what we'll do is we'll break up this recording here, and we'll make probably just one more recording at this rate. And I'll move over to the European account, and we'll see what those daily quests are, to see if there's anything slightly more interesting than just watching me play regular old Hearthstone. I probably will have some kind of post show. Maybe it won't be a silent post show. Maybe I'll just play off screen a little bit once the news is done. Sorry. That's gonna be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below in the description. And if you want to support me further, there's links to Patreon, or you can gift me a game on Steam. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.